I'm Alexander Pezo, and this is Elevate Your Worth. Elevate Your Worth is an empowering podcast and YouTube show. I'll engage with individuals who have wholeheartedly pursued their passion, often against the odds, and have carved out their unique paths to success. Leveraging my diverse background in sports, corporate leadership, entrepreneurship, and design, I look forward to helping individuals tell their story that may never have been heard before. My man, Gardy, the real estate CEO, also known as Gardy Saturne. Mike, go ahead and kick it off, man.
Are you dealing in your local area or are you nationwide as far as securing properties? What's the best market in the nation, in your opinion?
So that's a great question. What I started realizing was when I shifted to New Jersey was highly competitive just because there was a lot of other wholesalers, other people's marketing, and the price points were a lot higher. So what I realized was just me still learning, still educating myself. I realized that I wasn't able to enter the market as easily. So I started paying attention to different price points in different areas. And what I learned was Cleveland, Ohio was extremely good. And it was good just because, for example, like a duplex property in Cleveland, Ohio, you could be all in, for like maybe $50,000 to $60,000, and then you could turn around and rent it out for about $1,300 to $1,400 per month. And the rule of thumb is that when you're looking at long-term properties for buy and hold, if you could be all in for under 100,000 and turn around and rent it for at least 1,000, that's about 10% ROI. So once I saw that, I realized like, okay, a lot of people are going to Cleveland for cash flow properties. They want to be able to make money every single month by renting them out. And that's where I started just shifting towards, that area, started traveling out in that area. I went to trainings in that area and just building relationships to learn about the market. So as far as securing the properties, I just went to a market that made sense for me, made sense for, my business strategy, my end strategy. As far as the best market in the nation, I feel like all areas are good. It just depends, how can you enter in that market a lot easier, depending on your budget, depending on, if you want to do wholesaling, if you want to do flipping, and what resources do you have? And then pay attention to that stuff and then see how can you enter in that market.
It's good stuff.
That's great, man. That's good information. And, when you talk about reading and your whiteboard and your cold calling, I like that, man, because I'm a person that likes to write stuff down because I feel like I hold myself accountable. I'm an old school checklist guy. I'll make my list each day. I go through and I check stuff off for each week. And whatever I don't check off, I just carried it on to the next week. So that's a great way to hold yourself accountable. And another thing, for years, I've been in banking, man. And I mean, it started probably 10, 15 years ago where we had folks in California who'd come to Cincinnati and see that they could buy properties much, much cheaper than the market values out west. So they would come here, buy the properties at a deal for them, and they would turn around and repair those properties, renovate them, and then start to lease them. So one thing I like what you talked about is how you travel. Because one thing that I do is I like to travel, and whenever I go on vacation, I like to look at properties and see how things are going in different states and how I can bring those ideas back to Cincinnati when I work on my properties, whether it be aesthetically or just a concept. So what are some things that you picked up from some other cities or traveling around when you look at properties or you look at wholesaling?
Yeah, one thing that I saw specifically in Cleveland was just that there's a lot of duplexes, there's a lot of multifamily, period. But the difference was that comparing it to like New Jersey or New York area, Cleveland has more of like a suburban kind of vibe, a suburban kind of feel. So houses still had driveways, there's still grass in front. It's not really just city. And the thought process for me was, it's going to be a family that's going to be in there no matter what.
Right.
It's going to be a good school district, depending on, which zip code that you're at. Typically, when you come up north and then you have like more inner city, higher crime rate, the school districts may not be as good. It's smaller, per square foot. Everybody's a lot closer together. So, but people do that just because, of making money every single month during the cash flow. But in Cleveland, I just saw it was like kind of like the same thing. You could still get good rent and in a good area, and people will probably stay there, long term. That's what you want. You want a long term tenant. So that's the
Right.
piece that I saw that was different comparing Cleveland to where I'm from, between New York and New Jersey.
I can appreciate you saying that, hey, I'm not just staying here locally, I'm moving around. And when you move, you're doing training in those areas, because I call that KYP, know your personnel. You're getting to know that area. You like that one, Mike? You're getting to know that area where you are, man, so that you can move.
Right.
How they move in that area. You talked about better school districts. The state of Ohio has always been known for great public school and Catholic school tradition. So definitely a great move.
I mean, yeah, the information you're giving. So Brian had another question, and that question is, what might be the one major real estate investment pitfall you will warn an aspiring investor about?
Honestly, being educated. That's probably the most important thing. Once you're educated and you learn, because what you don't know is probably going to be your most biggest expense. What you don't know is probably going to be your most biggest expense. So anybody who's aspiring to be an investor, I'll get educated as much as possible about whatever strategy you want to get into. And after you get educated, just don't stay too long getting educated. And that was my mistake, right? And then when I go back and I talk about the confidence piece, when I was younger, I was always, signing up for courses, watching YouTube stuff 2 or 3 times, but I was always like 1 foot in and 1 foot out and not taking action. And that was the confidence thing that I learned as I got older. So anybody who's on this call, if you're thinking about real estate, really get educated, take the time to read books, listen to podcasts, you know, go to training seminars, get educated, and then, actually take action. Because that's when you're going to really start to learn a lot more about your marketing. You'll learn more about yourself. So that's what I would tell somebody who's thinking about getting into real estate.
What would you say, Mike? What would you say is one of the biggest pitfalls?
Well, I like, what he stated about educating yourself, but at some point you got to take action, because if you're just going to educate yourself, all you're going to be is an educator. You're going to be able to teach somebody else. One thing I tell my sons is that if you're going to get in the real estate game, you got to know all parts of it. How to deal with tenants, how to be able to go out and market your properties when they're vacant, how to be able to go find out, what market to be in is going to make you the most money, and about, what it costs to be able to do it. I tell them, if you pay somebody to come look at your furnace or to repair your furnace, if it costs you $200 for them to do whatever they're doing, that's a tutorial. So you know what you should do? You should follow that repairman around, look at what he's doing, take videos of what he's doing. That way you educate yourself, so the next time this particular thing happens, you got an idea of what actually happened, how much it's going to cost, and you don't have to, for the rest of your life, have people coming out and just taking advantage of you if you don't know. And I believe if you're not willing to swing a hammer, sweep, paint, you shouldn't get into it. Because if you're going to pay I don't believe in paying somebody to do something I can do and it's simple. If it's painting, all that is preparation, painting, and cleaning it up.
Right.
So, and plus that, you start to learn, my wife and I over the years when I've had real estate, she's always say, well, why do they want to charge that much? Or how much, this costs so much to be able to do it. But I tell her, I said, sweetie, you don't know how much stuff costs until you actually get on your hands and knees and have to do it. Then you start to understand how much things cost. So I believe starting out, you should be as hands-on as you possibly can, and interactive with whatever situation it is, because that's when you actually start to learn in the long run how to be preventative about maintenance, how much things cost, and just be able to put together a budget, because you understand what's going to happen going forward.
Right. Okay. And just one thing to say, to follow up on what Mike said, is the thing about hands-on. And I went to a training in Cleveland, and being able to walk the properties with the contractors, being able to know the cost of rehab for the Cleveland market, that's what really broke me through. So now when I'm looking at properties that I need to wholesale, I already have my pricing sheet. I already know that, windows is going to cost, $200 per window for that Cleveland market. I know if you're going to rehab the property for a flip, you're going to put hardwood floor. But if you're keeping it as a rental, you're going to put carpet. You know, certain things like that I was able to pick up, and that was because I was hands-on. And then that was my biggest learning style that I learned about myself. So anytime that I could go to an event, a training seminar, a networking event, or something that I could learn hands-on, I'm going no matter what.
Right.
That's good. So, Mike, I wrote down 3 things before you ask your next question.
Right.
When I asked the initial question about you talking about the pitfalls, right? I wrote down 3 things that we need to really focus on, and it doesn't matter what your current trade is. So, one of the things I wrote down was OJT, and you spoke to that, on the job training, man. Don't be afraid to, you know, when that plumber comes, be looking over his shoulder, not because you think he's trying to do something wrong, because you're trying to alleviate having to call him the next time.
Right.
That's the first thing. You know, as I've told Mike, you know, I'm in staffing, right? And I do consulting and things of that nature on that side. And 3 of my biggest customers are Parent Homes, Beezer Homes, and Ryan Homes. Do you think that's by coincidence? No, I do that for a reason, because 1, I want to see what type of materials they're throwing away. 2, I want to see, you know, how they put together their construction budget for a project.
Right.
So basically, I'm using my current employer to educate me in something that I do away from them.
Right.
The last thing, Mike, you know, I always say, OPP, and I'm not talking about no naughty by nature, other people's paper. If you're afraid to use other folks' paper, you will run out extremely quick. You know, you might get $100,000 is not a lot of money when you're in the real estate game. That could go real quick. So you have to have those resources, that OPP. I call them friends of the program. You know, that don't stand for Fraternal Order of Police. You got to have FOPs, because you need to know, Gardy, when you're in a deal, can I call Mike and say, Mike, I need you to drop 10 grand. It's going to pay you X amount of percent on the back end. Right. And Mike has full confidence that that's going to take place, and you guys execute a contract. Right. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
I'll say another thing. You know, I've always, over time, I've heard people say, well, it's a rental property, because, you know, I'm in the buy and hold. And they say, you know, you don't want to put quality stuff. Just buy something cheap and put it in. I think that's just silly. But the cheaper things you put into it and the less quality, the more it's going to break, more time you got to spend going back repairing it. You just spending more money over time. So I don't necessarily put A+ finishes in what I'm doing, but I try to put nice B finishes, things that are going to hold up, hard surfaces or whatever. And that's just because over time, I don't want to have to continue to spend the money. If people tearing it up, then it's not the quality of the material or the accessories that you're putting in. It's the people that you're written to. They're the bad people.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So Gardy, tell us this, man, in real estate, or when that day comes, when Gardy were to perish, right? You know, everybody's going to be there talking about, yeah, man, you remember that cookout we had, man, and Gardy put them ribs on. Okay, that's cool. What will people say your real estate epitaph? How will that read? We found out that you can make some ribs, but how is your real estate epitaph going to read when it's all said and done?
I think the way it's going to read is really paying attention to like what resources that you have in front of you right now, and how to make the best of it to make your real estate dreams, you know, your goals come true. Because a lot of people in my family was telling me, you have to have money, you know, you have to have money, you have to save a whole lot of money to be able to come into this game. And then that's not true, because the way that I'm coming into the game is not by having a whole lot of money. It's by doing wholesaling. It's by I'm putting a little bit of money behind some marketing, but it's not, you know, it's not a whole lot. You know, I didn't start with like $20,000 or $30,000 or something like that, or money in my 401k. I started just, you know, what can I afford every single week through my job, you know, through money I have saved up for marketing. So just using what you have, and then, you know, not really making an excuse and making it happen.
Right. And the second part to that, before you ask your question, Mike. So, Gardy, I heard the great Bob Knight say back in the day, mental to physical as is 4 is to 1. You spoke to working out, and I know you're an avid runner. Speak to the people about, on average, how many miles you run per day and how that affects your mental aspect so that it doesn't wear you out physically as you're along this journey.
Yeah, so right now, running is about like 3 to 5 miles per day. With the community that I'm in right now, we push for 100 miles, every single month. And when we first started, and I started telling people about it, it was like, wow, 100 miles, is a lot. And you kind of just, once you get introduced to that type of community, that kind of becomes a standard, And we've been doing 100 miles per month since like September 2019. So, and then it just helps me when I sweat, and then I have a hard workout, and then I go through that thing physically. Afterwards, I feel like whatever's going to happen through my day mentally, like I already had my hardest battle in the gym. So whatever's going to happen to me in the outside world, I could already knock that out. And that's the way that I tie like working out into my personal life.
Right. Hey, two great comments. Brian said, and I would be remiss if I didn't say the first part to set up the second part. Brian said, you like Frank Sinatra, old Blue Eyes, you did it your way. And I was thinking, nah, it's got to be something else. And then Mike came back with NWA, 100 miles and running. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about right there. So that's good stuff, fellas. Go ahead, Mike.
No, yeah, Gardy, I mean, you remind me of myself a whole lot because you do have to be mentally tough, man, when you're dealing with real estate and multiple careers. I mean, you have to understand, you got one job that you go to every day, trying to use that to be able to, fund your dream, and that's to be a real estate mogul or have real estate, whatever. So, you got to be able to stay mentally tough, and working out, all those type of things, man, helps with that, work off that energy and to keep you positive. So when Pete was asking you about what your dream is going forward, what have you start to plan right now? I think you said your son was 4, turning 4. So what have you started to plan for him right now as of this moment? What's your plan for him going forward?
He could have the option if he wants to be able to go to school, or if he actually, wants to pursue something different. I'm a firm believer now at this day and age. I think a college education is still valuable, but the cost to the college education is where it trips a lot of people up. Being able to get in debt and then turn around, work a job and then pay for it, versus if you have an asset, then you could turn around and pay for your college education. That's the difference. So that's something that I want to set up for him. So that when he gets older, he'll be able to make his decision, what he wants to do, and not because I have to go to school because this is the only option for me. I want to be able to have him make his own decision.
So you can start putting properties in it. You can start buying properties with him right now as a 4-year-old.
Right. That's going to be it. That's going to be the next shift. That's going to be the next shift for sure.
And one thing I didn't do that I would recommend that folks do, and some advice to you, is when my son Mike was in Atlanta and he was going to school, there were some condos were relatively close to where he was staying in an apartment. I said, man, I should go buy one of those condos and have him move into it, and then he could lease it to somebody. And they were selling for $90,000, and I just never got around to doing it. Right. And eventually he graduated. Now I go back down there, man, those condos selling for $300,000. So it made me so mad when I go to Atlanta, I don't even drive that way no more.
Right. But I mean, we all learn from, our mistakes. And right. Some of the things that I'm learning just this year, which is kind of like pushing, I'm not saying it's pushing my success a lot faster, but actually being able to partner with other people, right? Take the action yourself, put yourself out there, and then you're going to be able to attract the right people, build the right relationships with people in different areas, and then be able to partner with them. Because I was able to go only so far with myself, but I'm picking up a lot of more traction in my business because I'm partnering with other people.
Right. There's strength in numbers. And right. Mike, the next time you and Laconia come back to visit Yolanda and I'm gonna drive you to where those condos were, because I'm a firm believer to embrace your future, you have to remember your past.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm gonna say, Mike, $200,000 ago, man, you could have bought this joint right here.
Oh man, it's great.
So I'm actually disc certified, Gardy, and I'm 67% D, 81% I. But my superpower, man, is definitely acting in my D. And for those that aren't familiar with a disc, you know, that D of the disc is someone that's um, extremely faster paced, task oriented, more dominant, more of a driver, things
Correct.
of that nature. And that I is, listen, man, I could talk to just about anybody. You know, I could probably sell ice to Eskimo, but I like moving in my D. So for someone like you, based on how you move and how you plan your day and how you track, you seem to be like someone that's more of a C. You're more methodical, more thought out. Tell
Correct.
us what you are. If you happen to know, if you've taken a disc, what are you? Are you a
Yeah,
D, I?
I've taken a disc assessment. I don't know the actual like letters compared to the animals because I
Yep.
learned it. I'm a chameleon, right? So like I'm task oriented. I'm very like detail oriented. I want to be able to have all the information in front of me, like steps 1, step 2, step 3.
So
And
you're an
then once I
S.
yeah, exactly. So
Yep.
yeah, correct. I'm an S related to the disc assessment. So once I learned that, then I realized, all right, if that's my personality style, how can I make that work when I work with other people?
Okay. So what's your secret superpower?
I think my secret superpower is I learned this from one of my mentors is that when you don't see a leader in a room, automatically step in and be the leader yourself. Just
Gotcha.
because he explained that to me from a point of view that if the ship is going to sink and then you see something that could prevent it from sinking, but you want to wait for somebody to do that, you do it yourself. And then you jump in and you take action. And once you see like the better leader that could like lead a lot better than you, I learned to pass the rock to them because I learned to like drop the ego. If we're all headed to the same mission, if we're all headed to the same place, to have a winning team, it doesn't matter who scores as long as we just actually win.
So are you 100% chameleon, or are you a mix of some turtle? Do we have some
Yeah, I'm more,
flamingo?
I'm more, I'm more chameleon. It's probably like about like 70%,
Okay.
70%, 75%. I think my next one is my lowest one is actually like the lion. So I
Right.
think I'm a mix between like chameleon, turtle, and then it goes to lion, and then my lowest one is a flamingo.
Yeah, I definitely threw out. That's why I said, you have a lot of turtle attributes about you.
Right,
Um,
correct, correct.
and for those that don't know, that turtle is slower paced, task oriented, and that turtle is kind of like the lion's cousin. The turtle
Right,
keeps that lion from getting into a lot of trouble because a lion will have great ideas and no concept behind it. They'll just say, "Hey, we're gonna be millionaires tomorrow," with no
right,
planning. Well, that
right, right, right,
turtle,
right,
the
right.
turtle's gonna put together that methodical planning and take it to the line and say, here's what we need to do to move the needle and get there.
Right, right,
Good
right, right.
stuff.
And one thing I do want to mention, if anybody's going to be taking the disc assessment going forward, a lot of times people want to, when they hear about the line or they hear about the D, it's like somebody who's driving, somebody who's going to make stuff happen. And then when they don't see themselves as that, don't feel bad because I figured, I was a lion, when I first learned it. And then once I learned that wasn't me, right, I was like, all right, let me not get in my feelings. Let me see what I really am and focus on how to be that best version and bring that best version to yourself to the table when you start working with other people. I want to be able to do good at what I do good at and make sure I bring that to the table and make sure that I'm valuable in those areas.
I've always been impressed with how you carried yourself, man, and just your conversation, your whole demeanor, man. Um, you got what I call good posture. You know what I'm saying?
I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Gardy, we appreciate you coming on, man. You've done a phenomenal job. You're a phenomenal, humble spirit, man. I love your approach with everything. One of the things that we'd like to have you do is, one, tell us if there's anything we can do to help you with our community.
If anybody's interested in real estate or just starting out, they could definitely reach out. I could jump on a call with them, let them know like what we're working on. If that's something that may be of interest and anything connected to Ohio, real estate related. That's my primary market right now, specifically in Cleveland. So anybody that's just in a real estate space I love to like connect and network with them and see, you know, how we could build.
If you like what we did today, tell a friend. Don't come by yourself next time. Because as I always say, I've never seen a U-Haul behind a funeral procession. We can't take this knowledge with us. Have a great day. We out. For more episodes of Elevate Your Worth, please like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow I Am Alexander Pezo on all social media platforms.